There are a great many people raised as Christians who no longer are active in their faith. But I've learned this: it's not because they deny their faith. They don't say, I deny Jesus or what he taught. They don't say that. They really don't live their faith because their lives are one constant distraction. You think about how distracted our lives can be. It's lots of media, 24-hour news, emails, our own concerns about health and wealth and careers and children, whatnot, that our lives tend to lack a focus. A recent study said that an office worker is distracted between 3 and 11 times every hour. I remember one of my good friends who worked for the Census Department. He lamented the fact that he got copied in so many emails. It was just filled with emails, taking so much time away. And so we live this way, this high energy kind of lifestyle, and we think, well, that's normal. That's what life is like. And that is not true. In fact, one of the penalties of a distracted life is that we live on the surface of our souls. We're tempted to live on the surface of our souls. And so many, hundreds of thousands, stop practicing their faith because their life is one constant distraction. Now, this past week we celebrated the feast day of St. Ignatius Loyola, who is the founder of the Jesuits. And his whole goal in life as a young person was to become a military hero. And in battle, a cannonball struck his leg, and he landed up in bed for months. So all of a sudden, his life of distraction was over. The same thing happened to St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis of Assisi's goal was to become a military hero. So he went into battle, got badly wounded, and he spent months in bed. And there was no television, no radio, no source of music. There was just nothing, no magazines. There was this one book next to his bed, and it was the Lives of the Saints. And he was so disgusted with it that he wouldn't even look at the book. But boredom eventually got to him, and he opened that book, The Lives of the Saints, and it changed his life. He began to think about what his life was like, what meaning it had, what purpose he served. That's what changed his life. For Ignatius of Loyola, Francis of Assisi, and so many others, when life somehow kind of stops us, when it becomes just kind of boring and we start to think a bit, that's when we find room in our hearts for God. And that's oftentimes how God uses the tragedies in our life to help us think about what our life is really about. So setbacks and failures that kind of break the pattern of our lives can also bear the gift of a more thoughtful kind of life. Because the truth is, every person has a kind of hunger within them. In the 63rd Psalm, O God, you are my God whom I seek. For you my body yearns, my soul thirsts, like a land parched, lifeless, and without water. Sometimes we think, well, if I just had more money, more fame, more power, better looks, whatever, life would be fine. And that's not true at all. There was a study done on a community in California that was a super wealthy community. Mansions, all mansions, cars like Cadillacs and BMWs and expensive stuff. The schools were the best equipped schools you could find anywhere. So this was a community of people who have really made it. And they were sort of the envy of other people. It was kind of the golden part of California. And then sociologists studied it and found that it had the highest level, about the highest level of drug abuse and alcoholism in the whole country. And that teen suicide and marriages breaking up was a super concern. So they had everything. But it's only when we start calming ourselves down, getting our lives in order, that we start asking the basic questions about ourselves that makes a difference. This is what Paul Newman said, the actor. We've all seen him. He had fame, fortune, a good marriage. And this is what he said: I'm just not happy. I do not have inner serenity. And I don't have the guts to do anything else. Something is missing in my life. Well, from a worldly point of view, he had everything. But from a spiritual point of view, he was empty. And that is the situation of a lot of people who don't realize how empty they are spiritually because they are so distracted. Distractions can act like anesthesia for the soul. It just quiets the inner hunger we have for God. So that inner emptiness is what Jesus is addressing when he says, I am the bread of life. In this part of John's chapter 6, which is all about, reflects the Eucharist. The first part of what John is talking about is the Word of God, the wisdom of God taking flesh. And then next week, he goes on in John 6 to talk about the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist. But now he's talking about the Word of God being the wisdom by which we live our lives. And that's important because, as I've indicated, people in our